what is so special about Ganesha when we have Shiva, Vishnu, and Devi and all of these other deities? In the Advaitic tradition, so there's Bhagavan takes 6 forms, and these are Shiva, Vishnu Bhagavan, Devi, Kumara, Surya, and the 6th is Bhagavan Shri Ganesh. Shri Ganesh is the medium of manifesting anything and everything that you want.
There's another fascinating story. There's a female version of Ganesh Ji called Vinayaki. Why is she so less spoken about?
So in the Ganesh Puran, Parvati prayed to Ganesha and said, I want you to be born as my son, and that's how he was born. In Shiva Puran, there's the famous story of how Ganesha came into being from the body of Parvati.
यहाँ पे एक और कहानी है. जैसे ही श्री गणेश ने महाभारत लिखी, his body temperature rose and Ved Vyas ji picked him up and immersed him in water.
Correct.
Which is what visarjan typically also can be construed.
Correct.
What is this theory?
This is the Ida and Pingala energy pathways in our being, where Devi sits at the Muladhara chakra and Shiva sits at the Sahasrara chakra. What is needed is something that will balance the two. Ganesha now starts to sit at the Muladhara chakra and he allows Devi to ascend.
There's also a lot of stories on कि इनका trunk कभी right side में है, कभी left side में है. True, is there context over there as well?
जो left trunk के गणेश जी है, he is महागणपति, और जो right trunk के गणेश जी है, he is सिद्धि विनायक.
Another surprising form of Ganesh Ji is Aghori.
Now, when you go down the Aghora path.
What is this path? You spoke about the Tantrik form as well.
Correct.
Let's discuss that.
Now, what is Tantra? You have mantra, which is Mananat Trayate iti mantra. To utilize the mantra, you need what is known as a yantra. When the universe was created, when the Big Bang happened, the sound with which the entire creation manifested was Om.
While reciting aartis, have you ever wondered what do those lines really mean? And do you ever wonder about the stories of the gods we worship? If yes, then this episode is right up your alley. Meet Om Dhumatkar, a spiritualist, a teacher, and a pandit from LSC. With 18 years of experience, Om uses the rich knowledge from our shastras to coach top CEOs and leaders today. Join us for an episode about the most beloved deity, Ganpati. From the symbolism behind his physical attributes to his dark side, and from the right way to worship him to the lessons that we can learn from him, we discuss it all. Stay tuned for a deep dive into Ganesh Ji. Welcome to Humans of Bombay, Om. It's lovely to have you, and happy Ganesh Chaturthi.
Happy Ganesh Chaturthi to you too. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a very festive time, and we're in the middle of Ganesh Chaturthi, and the city truly comes alive, for me at least, Bombay, which is where I've grown up. And it's that time of the year, right? Where now it goes into Diwali and Dussehra and Christmas and New Year. So it's a good feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're inaugurating it with you and our podcast with you. So very excited to chat and really understand certain nuances of the festivals we celebrate and the gods we worship.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So since this is a Ganesh Chaturthi special, talk to me about Ganesh, right? He is one of the most worshipped gods and considered likely so. What is his story? Tell me the story and paint a picture for everybody who's watching.
So there are innumerable stories about Ganesha. And I think in the whole spectrum of deities that we have within Hinduism, he is not only one of the most loved, but he is also one of the most omnipresent. In any temple dedicated to any deity, anywhere you will see a shrine for Ganesh Ji. And of course, Maharashtra is known as Sri Kshetra. So it's the place of Ganesha himself. And Mumbai being the capital of Maharashtra, obviously, here the celebrations are the grandest. But one question that I often get asked is, what is so special about Ganesha when we have Shiva, Vishnu, and Devi, and all of these other deities? So it's very important to understand, in the Sanatani perspective, in the Hindu perspective, we have multiple ways to describe who the divine is. See, in English, we only have one word.
Yeah.
In Sanskrit, we have 4 words: Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, and Ishwar. Okay. Brahman is unmanifest, nirgun, not visible, all pervading, without form, is Brahman. That Brahman also sits in our heart as our Atma. So that connection between who we are intrinsically as a soul and the divine soul is Paramatma. Third one is Ishvara. The divine arranges all of our lives in accordance with our karma. But the fourth one is the most interesting, which is Bhagavan, which is a specific form with whom we can have divine communion. We can engage with the divine directly. We can worship them, we can speak to them, we can invoke them, we can share our hearts out with them. That divine form is known as Bhagavan. Now, in the Advaitic tradition, started by Adi Shankaracharya, of which I am part, he says that Bhagavan takes 6 forms. And these are Shiva and forms of Shiva, Vishnu Bhagavan and forms of Vishnu, Devi and forms of Devi, Kumara, which is Skanda or Kartikeya and forms of Skanda and Kartikeya, Surya Bhagavan, where unfortunately now there's not that much of Surya worship, but Gayatri Mantra is a ode to Surya Bhagavan.
Correct.
And the 6th is Bhagavan Shri Ganesh. So of all of these forms, Shri Ganesh is the most directly accessible, the most visible, the most omnipresent, because you will see him everywhere. But Ganesha's stories are innumerable.
Okay.
And Ganesha appears in various Puranas and Itihasas. So in Mahabharata, he appears as the scribe of the Mahabharata.
Correct.
In Shiva Puran, there's the famous story of how Ganesha came into being from the body of Parvati, which I can go into a little bit of depth if we want. And then there's the whole Ganesh Puran as well, where Ganesh is shown as the absolute indivisible truth, as Brahman himself. But Brahman who takes form when the devotee asks for them to. So in the Ganesh Puran, for example, it is said Parvati prayed to Ganesha and said, I want you to be born as my son, and that's how he was born, as the son. But the famous story is from the Shiv Puran, where Parvati is alone in Kailash for long periods of time as Shiva goes off on his meditations. And she, when he comes back, he just barges in, typically. So at the door, she puts Nandi one day and says that, please stop anyone from entering. And Shiva comes home, Nandi doesn't even consider stopping him. And it was his house. So Parvati is like, now I need an attendant of my own. I can't rely on Shiva's attendant. So she is Prakriti herself, material energy personified. So from her own body, from chandan and haldi that she puts on her own body, she scrapes it off and sculpts a beautiful boy. That boy is called Vinayak. And that boy she infuses life into. Vinayak, why? Because he's born without a Nayak, without a father. He's divinely manifested being. Now, Vinayak is Parvati Ma's attendant. So when Shivji comes back, he stops him. And Shiva's like, first he's very amused. Who is this child stopping me? So he sends his ganas, one after the other, his attendants go and try and move this kid out of the way. They fight him. He kills all of them. He overpowers all of them. Then finally Shiva says, I only have to go. Come on, you guys aren't able to do anything. And he goes and they duel. And at the end of it, Shiva has to use his Trishul and cut the child's head off. Now Parvati Ma is distraught. She said, how could you have destroyed my Gana in this way? Not just my Gana, but my son. This is my son. So I will take my Shakti out of all of creation. At which point Brahmadev goes to Shiva and says that, look, I have created this whole creation with Parvati Ma's Shakti. So if that Shakti is taken away, then creation itself will dissolve. So please do something. So he tells his Ganas, go in the northern direction or go in all directions, and the first northern facing being that you find, bring its head. And they find a baby elephant, they bring the head, and it is attached to this boy who is then given form again and called Ganapati. And this is the story. The meaning behind the story is very interesting because this Shiva rushing into Devi's quarters and Devi walking into Shiva's space, because there are stories also where Shiva is delivering sermons and Devi just shows up. And she'll show up and she'll sit there and she'll sit on Shiva's lap or she'll sit anywhere. So there's this natural synergy between the couple where they just show up in each other's spaces. This is the Ida and Pingala energy pathways in our being, where Devi sits at the Muladhara chakra and Shiva sits at the Sahasrara chakra. And constantly with these energy pathways, they are going and meeting each other. What is needed is something that will balance the two. That sits in the middle. That is the Sushumna Nadi, where Ganesha now starts to sit at the Muladhara chakra and he allows Devi to ascend from Muladhara to Sahasrara chakra, which is the highest chakra, which is the place of Shiva.
Okay.
So there is an entity that is required to regulate that relationship. What happens is when Shiva, who is the highest knowledge, comes and sees a being that has been created only by Prakriti, that being has no knowledge of what is the supreme truth. He only knows the material world. So Shiva has to take the Trishul, which is the three forms of ignorance, which removes the three forms of ignorance, and take out the child's ego. So that is symbolized by the head being cut off, but then being replaced by a greater, more dexterous head. So that process of, seeing the child lose its head and now acquire a new head is the process of us progressing on our spiritual path and losing our ego and acquiring a higher intelligence.
Wow. Yeah, I think the meaning is so important because we see it from an external perspective कि ये कहानी थी, ये कभी हुआ है.
Correct.
क्यों हुआ है is so important to understand in our context.
Yeah.
Because it's so relevant in our context.
And today everyone asks, now what kind of deities you worship where they cut off their children's heads? But the reality is, at the end of the day, if we want to progress spiritually, then we have to be willing to lay our ego down. Not necessarily our head, physical head. But ultimately we have to go to a temple and we bow our head, we give up our ego at the feet of Bhagwan.
It's a metaphor. Yeah,
completely.
It is a metaphor, right. So, there are so many theories कि Ganesh ji के कान बड़े हैं, he has this feature, that feature. Is there a context to that as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
इसका ये symbolism है.
Definitely. See, now today we talk about manifestation.
Yeah.
But the very form of Bhagwan Shri Ganesh is the pathway to manifestation.
Okay.
Every element of Bhagwan Shri Ganesh's being gives us some message or the other. If we want success, Bhagwan has a big head, which means that we have to be able to absorb and retain a large volume of knowledge. Bhagwan has small eyes, which tell us concentrate. Bhagwan has large ears, which say listen more than you speak. In fact, his mouth is covered, which says don't speak as much as unless you need to, and when you speak, say things of value. He has a trunk, which is so strong that it can uproot a tree. But it's also so dexterous, it can pick up a pin from the ground. See Bhagwan's body, his belly is large, which says digest the good and bad that the world throws at you. Figure out how you can digest it. He has 4 hands. Each hand represents a different capability. In his back hands, he's got Pasha and Ankush. They are meant to prod you along the spirit. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And then once you're going too far, the other one is a rope. Holds you back. Holds you back from falling. So he will encourage you. He will push you. But he will hold you back from going over the edge. And in his right hand, he is giving you an Ashirvad. But in his left hand, he is holding a Modak.
Yeah.
What does the Modak symbolize? Modak is the fruit of spiritual achievement. But Bhagwan Shri Ganesh says that for my devotees, enjoy the world. Figure out, experience not enjoy necessarily, experience the world. Go out, spread your capabilities, maximize yourself. And then once you have maximized yourself, realize that there is only one ultimate spiritual truth. So even the form of the Modak is expansive to begin with. But then as the devotee maximizes, they come back to a point of singularity. That is the highest truth. So when we look at Shri Ganesh, we can absorb all of these messages. And one, when we have darshan of Bhagwan, God knows what point we are in our life. One aspect of Bhagwan will give us the message that we need.
Yeah. when you put it like that, it just makes so much sense, right? कि हर चीज़ का एक symbolism होता है, and it's applicable to us most importantly,
बिल्कुल,
which
बिल्कुल.
is where it has to be. There's also a lot of stories on कि इनका trunk कभी right side में है, कभी left side में है, इसका ये meaning है, उसका वो meaning है. Is that true? Is there context over there as well?
हाँ जी, बिल्कुल. देखिए अभी आप करिश्मा, if I meet you as a friend, there's a different version of you that will show up. या अगर मैं आपको कहूँ कि आप मेरे ऑफिस में आ जाइए मिलने के लिए, आप आपके ऑफिशियल रोल में आ जाएंगी. सो देयर इज अ डिफरेंट एक्सपेक्टेशन. अभी मैं ऑफिस में बैठ के आपके घर की बातें करूँ, क्या चल रहा है, हाउ इज लाइफ, तो आप कहोगे यार ऑफिस का टाइम है, आराम से बाद में बात करेंगे. सो उसी तरीके से जो लेफ्ट ट्रंक के गणेश जी है, ही इज महागणपति, और जो राइट ट्रंक के गणेश जी है, ही इज सिद्धि विनायक. अभी सिद्धि विनायक की क्या स्पेशलिटी है? सिद्धि विनायक हमें ये बताते हैं कि सिद्धि पाने के लिए आपको पहले साधना करनी पड़ती है. तो सिद्धि विनायक को पूजने के लिए आपको बहुत कड़ी साधना करनी पड़ती है. यू हैव टू अंडरटेक अ लॉट ऑफ स्पिरिचुअल प्रैक्टिस, एंड दैट स्पिरिचुअल प्रैक्टिस इज वेरी टाइटली प्रिस्क्राइब्ड एंड रेगुलेटेड. यू नो, देयर इज, अगर आप ऑफर कर रहे हो, तो अगर आप मोदक भी ऑफर कर रहे हो, तो ये एक तरीका होता है मोदक ऑफर करने का. अदरवाइज आपने अगर वो सही से नहीं किया, आपको वो सिद्धि नहीं मिलेगी. एंड द प्रेजेंस ऑफ सिद्धि विनायक, you might not be able to bear his presence because he then comes in an official capacity.
Yeah.
He comes कि okay चलो भाई क्या करना है, मैं तुम्हें सिद्धि दे दूंगा. So that's why जो right trunk के गणेश जी है, सिद्धि विनायक जो है, उनके लिए बहुत ही कड़ी और स्पेसिफिक डिटेल्ड साधना और सेवा प्रिस्क्राइब की गई है. इवन अगर बॉम्बे में आप सिद्धि विनायक मंदिर में गए, in that temple you will see Bhagwan Shri Ganesh with his trunk on the right hand side, and if you speak to any of the purohits, any of the pujaris, they will tell you that there is from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. there is detailed seva happening of Bhagwan all the time. Even for example, when people are doing darshan and they are doing the offering, in the background there is some sadhana or the other happening. So Siddhi Vinayak requires very specific worship.
Correct.
Mahaganapati is loving. Mahaganapati is open. Mahaganapati embraces you. He says, मेरे को 40 फुट की मूर्ति लगाओ, मैं आ जाऊंगा. He says, मेरे को छोटा सा ऐसा एक गणपति रखो और मेरी पूजा करो, I'll happily come. So left trunk के जो गणेश जी है, महागणपति जो है, is very accessible. हाँ, लेकिन कैसा है, अगर आपके मन में श्रद्धा है, तो you should do it according to the shastras. Because now people, you know, get plaster of Paris Ganpatis, for example. I don't have a issue with them because हर एक कोई अपनी श्रद्धा से लाता है. लेकिन एक ये है कि in that plaster of Paris form, for the deity to come is very difficult.
Okay. Explain, what is this form?
So plaster of Paris as a material is a construction material.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's made of silica and cement and all of these things mixed together. So it's quite durable, it's light, and it's usually used in construction.
Okay.
But in any puja, we invoke the presence of the deity in the form.
To come into the idol.
Correct.
Yeah.
So normally we will say idol or murti. अभी ये सामने रखा है, ये मूर्ति है. अगर इसकी पूजा की and we invoke Bhagwan's presence in this murti, then that becomes what's known as a vigraha. That is the word that we normally use. Bhagwan ka vigraha hai, which is an energized deity form that is present and accessible to us. Now, for Bhagwan to come into any form, there are specific natural materials that are required.
Okay.
Those are, you know, pure metals or a mixture of pure metals. So these would be your copper, bronze, gold, silver, or, you know, combination of all of these, which is called panchadhatu. So you have a lot of metallic murtis. It is stone.
Okay.
And typically you will see black stone murtis, black granite, you will see marble murtis. And then you have clay. So for the Ganesh festival, we bring clay, and a lot of people even make chota Ganpatis of turmeric and sandalwood powder.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So all of these, because they are natural materials, we are able to invoke the deity's presence in them. Now what happens is that when you use construction materials, we are not able to invoke the deity's presence because these are very natural processes.
Right.
So if you use an artificial material, it won't come. For example, if this was a plastic murti, Bhagwan can't come. It's a unnatural material, as it were. Then some people say, oh, but Bhagwan is everywhere. Yes, Bhagwan is everywhere. But we are calling him into the deity form because we want to interact with him.
Yeah.
So if we want to interact with him, then we have to use the proper means that have been prescribed.
Correct. Right. Understood, and makes a lot of sense when you put it like that. What is the best way? You said that do it in the proper way. आप अच्छी तरह से पूजा करो. What is that अच्छी तरह से पूजा करो?
See, any puja that is done with the heart is good, in my view, especially for Sri Ganesh, who is very welcoming, very all-encompassing. And even though I said this about plaster of Paris and all, you have plaster of Paris murtis and Bhagwan's presence is there in those. You have these big murtis and all, the big pandals, they get Bhagwan and he is there, he is present in that. So Bhagwan Sri Ganesh is very all-embracing. But in our tradition, typically when we do puja, it has 3 or 4 steps in it. Okay. The first step is known as Purvanga Puja. Purvanga Puja is known as the preparatory step. Purvang Puja में क्या होता है, हम जो भी चीज़ें हैं, जो भी पदार्थ है, जिनका हम इस्तेमाल करने वाले हैं, उनको प्योरीफाई करते हैं. हम खुद को भी प्योरीफाई करते हैं. हम जो पानी इस्तेमाल करेंगे भगवान को देने के लिए, फूल इस्तेमाल करेंगे, सबको प्योरीफाई करके सारी तैयारी कर लेते हैं. एंड देन वी टेक व्हाट्स नोन एज अ संकल्प. सो संकल्प इज इंटेंडेड टू स्टेट आवर इंटेंशन कि हम अभी भगवान श्री गणेश की पूजा करने वाले हैं. After that Purvanga Puja is done, we have the second step, which is Avahanam. Avahanam is to welcome the deity into the form that we have placed. That's why in many households, you will see before the puja happens, Ganeshji's face is covered. They'll cover it with a cloth. Even in my home, when we do Ganesh, when we bring the deity home, the face is covered. Why? Because the presence of the divine is not in the deity anymore. So there is a specific process with mantras, with meditation to invoke the presence of the deity in that form. That is known as Avahan. The third one is known as Upachar or Seva. Now there are innumerable types of Seva that we can do. But the minimum number is 5. Okay. And those 5 are Jalam, Gandham, Pushpam, Dhupam, Deepam. Okay. Now these 5 correspond with the 5 elements.
Yeah.
What is the idea? That all creation is a combination of 5 elements. And those 5 elements we offer back to the source of creation.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
So first we offer Jalam, water, which is all life has come from water. First there was water before everything else. So Jalam we offer. Second is Gandham, which is the scent of the earth. We take sandalwood, which is infused with all of the energy and nutrition of the earth. We grind it, create powder and offer it back. Yeah. So Gandham is offered to Bhagwan and we say that we will grind ourselves in the same way in your service. The third one is Pushpam. Pushpam is flowers. Flowers represent space. How? At one point there was nothing. Then in that nothing, suddenly one bud came. Suddenly that bud flowered. Suddenly that flower was pollinated. That pollinated flower became a fruit. That fruit had seeds that created new plants.
Yeah.
So from nothing, where something comes, that we offer to Bhagwan as Pushpam.
Yeah.
Dhupam is wind, air, so that when we burn ourselves in spiritual service, the fragrance of our efforts should purify the environment around. So Dhupam. And then finally is Deepam, light, fire. And in our scriptures, जो अग्नि है उसका सबसे उच्च स्थान है क्योंकि अग्नि represents knowledge. Even when we do Gayatri mantra, we are worshipping. We say Dhiyo Yonav Prachodayat, O Surya Dev, O Savitri. Ignite our minds. In the Vedas it said, Na tatra Suryo bhati na chandra tarakam, nema vidyuto bhanti kutoyam agnihi. Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvam vibhati. Says, I cannot see the sun, the moon, the stars. I can't even see these small lights that I have offered to you until and unless I have that light that you have given me in my heart that gives me life and that allows me to see everything. So it's a very, very divine, deeply philosophical, highly symbolic, esoteric and experiential offering when we offer these 5 things. Now, this is minimum 5.
Yeah.
Uske alawa, you have 16 offerings where we offer flowers ke saath, we will offer pushpamala as in a har, we'll offer rice, we will offer different types of chandan, fir haldi, kumkum, we'll offer jewelry, abharanam. So I say 16 hai, 54 bhi hai. So there's, once you get into the path of service, there's innumerable. So that's the third one. And then the fourth and final one is once we have finished our service, we will offer Bhagwan Naivedyam. We'll offer some food. We offer that, and actually there are processes where the deity will accept it in its prana form. So that's why when we do the offering of Naivedyam, we offer the 5 pranas. And you might have seen people just let that when they're offering. That is, we're individually offering different prana forms to Bhagwan, and Bhagwan is consuming it. So once that has been consumed by Bhagwan, we are then able to distribute that Naivedya as prasad to people.
Right.
Yeah. So Naivedya, prasad, and finally we have aarti. So aarti mein everyone gets up, happily sings. We rejoice the presence of Bhagwan in our lives, and it's very beautiful.
Yeah. So tell me the significance of the aarti as well, right? Because like you said, everybody enjoys it, and that's the time when it's most felt in that context. So what is the significance of
So Aratrikam, as it is called, is the offering of light to the divine. And as I explained, when we offer the light to the divine, we are meant to reflect on the fact that this light comes from the divine itself. And that the ultimate light is the light in our hearts, our soul, which is divine.
Yeah.
So it is a very interesting journey because you have the deity, you have the light in the middle, and you have your own being. And we are saying that all 3 are undifferentiated.
Wow.
And when we do aarti, we extol various virtues of the divine. So, all Marathi mein famous aarti, Sukha Karta, Dukha Harta, Varta, Vignachi. See, this is Sukha Karta, that you are the giver of all bliss. Dukha Harta, all of my sadness, you take it away. Varta, Vignachi, that Vigna is obstruction. You don't even take out the obstruction, you take out the talk. The very mention of an obstruction, you are the one who takes it away. So we extol these various virtues of Bhagwan, और जब हम उनकी वैसे प्रशंसा करते हैं, तब हमारे मन में उनकी सारे क्वालिटीज आ जाते हैं. और अलग अलग आरतियाँ है, फिर हम कहते हैं कि आपने ऐसा किया, आपने वैसा किया, शिव जी ने ऐसा किया, देवी ने ऐसा किया, and finally we ended in Maharashtra at least with this beautiful prarthana. People say it's an aarti, it's actually a prarthana called Ghalin Lotangana Vandina Charan. So what that does is it combines 3 or 4 final steps of the pujas, where we do Karpur Aarti. Kapoor ke saath karte hain usko. We also do Pradakshina, where we turn around. And the idea of doing a Pradakshina is we see wherever we go in life, we'll carry the presence of the divine with us.
The 2 or 3 turns.
Right? They do 1, some people do 3. 3 makes you dizzy, especially when you are carrying an aarti. So if you are carrying the aarti, do 1.
Okay.
So you do the pradakshina, and then you do kshama prarthana. Kayena vacha manasendriyeva buddhyatmanava prakriti swabhavat karom yadyat sakalam parasmai narayanayati samarpayami shri ganeshati samarpayami. Which is whatever I do, whatever I have done, I always carry the awareness that you are the doer and you are the one who makes it happen. So please always remain with me as an awareness. So आरती के एंड में ये सारे जो लास्ट स्टेप्स ऑफ पूजा एक साथ बन जाते हैं. Then we do a nice big आरती and we are happy.
Yeah, you feel happy.
Yes.
Let's talk about visarjan, right?
Yeah.
What is the actual significance? क्यों हम ये मूर्ति लेके, I mean, now people do it in the sea, then there are now eco-friendly murtis which dissolve in a bucket of water. Correct. Or some people now obviously in the light of these conversations, वो गणेश जी को अंदर रखते थे, during the next Ganpati they bring it out, पूजा करके वापस वहीं पे रखते थे.
Correct.
So विसर्जन का significance क्या है?
देखिए, before we do the visarjan, there is a step in the puja that is called udvasanam. Udvasanam is the opposite of avahanam. Avahanam, जैसे हमने डिस्कस किया कि we invite the presence of the divine into the vigraha. Udvasanam is to take the presence of the divine in the vigraha and ensure that it stays in our heart. So we take that prana back into ourselves. Or we take the prana into ourselves. And we say, hey Bhagwan, you have been in front of us. We have worshipped you for 2, 5, 7, 10 days. But now we have to say goodbye. But let this not be a goodbye. May you stay in our hearts forever. So that Udvasanam happens. Once the Udvasanam has happened, that Vigraha becomes a Murti once again. Right? That form of the divine is no longer infused with that divine energy. So when that happens, any material form has to dissolve.
Yeah.
That is the nature. Even you might build the best building. If it is not taken care of, eventually it will decay.
Correct.
7 wonders of the ancient world, where are they now? There's only one, and that is also decayed. Pyramids of Giza.
Yes.
So the idea is that once we have only a material murti left, then we have to get used to the idea that everything in nature dissolves.
Wow.
Yeah. And to become familiar with that, we are encouraged to take that deity, which is usually made of mud or sandalwood or turmeric, and dissolve it in a flowing body of water, usually river. Bombay, there's no flowing body of water, so we put it in the sea. Yeah. Now, what is the significance of this? Firstly, flowing body of water is time. Time is ever flowing. Time doesn't stop for anyone. So everything that we have that is material in nature will eventually flow with time. So, and if, in our lives, Karishma, you may have experienced this. I have certainly experienced it. We experience various types of losses. Even if we love someone the dearest to us, at some point they will leave us. And this is a training that the divine who comes and sits with us for a few days also, before he goes or as he goes, trains us that in this world, time will take all of your relations away. So that in the flow of time, we put the murti. Now, the name itself, visarjan, is very, very, very deep. Now, sarjan, it's made of 2 words, vishesh and sarjan. Vi is vishesh, sarjan is sarjan. Sarjan is means dissolution. In Sanskrit, it's also known as srujan. It's not throwing away, it's not immersion. It is dissolution. So it implies that there is a very special form of dissolution that happens at the end of Ganeshotsav. That's why it's called Vishesh Sarjan, special Sarjan. That is the dissolution of our ego. And when we let go of the Murti, we're also letting go. We're saying, take away whatever negativities that we might have. And that special Sarjan, that Vishesh Sarjan, if we are able to achieve, then our Ganpati Puja is successful.
Yeah. It's a proper close to everything.
Absolutely.
To the days leading up to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it prepares us. It prepares us for now. We've finished 4 months of Chaturmas, the monsoons, where it's been raining. We haven't doing much. But now as we go into winter, there's a harvest season. We have to work hard. Even the corporate world, the last quarter of the year is very busy, as we know. And then you enter the first quarter of the new calendar year, that's also very busy. So Ganesh festival preps us, gives us the energy for this new chapter that's coming.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about myths, right? And also not a myth, but lesser known fact is that Ved Vyas ji asked Ganesh ji, Shri Ganesh, to scribe the Mahabharata.
Correct.
Which a lot of people don't know and aren't aware of that story. Why was he chosen?
See, the origin of documenting the Mahabharata is very fascinating. Now, what's interesting about the Mahabharata as well as the Ramayana is that they were written contemporaneously to the events. That's why they're known as itihasas.
Correct.
Whereas the rest of the kathas that we have, they are known as Puranas. And the Ramayana, as we know, was first written, the Adi Kavi is Valmiki ji. Although there's a version that Hanumanji has also written that it said is lost now. And the Mahabharata is composed by Ved Vyas ji. Ved Vyas ji, when this idea came to him, he was quite troubled originally, in the sense that these great events of the Mahabharata had happened. And, so many leaders and kings and armies had perished in this war. And also, on the other hand, you had the revelation of the Bhagavad Gita by Bhagavan Shri Krishna. And you had the revelation of Vishnu Sahasranam that was done by Bhishma as he was lying on a bed of arrows. These phenomenal spiritual and political events had taken place at the same time. And so Ved Vyas ji wanted to record it.
Yeah.
And in his desire to record these events, he meditated immensely to be able to compose the story in such a way, or to create the right starting point and the right end point and everything in between. So in his meditation, the story grew and grew and grew, because at which point does a flower blossom? Was it when the bud came on the tree? Was it when the tree grew? Was it when the tree was planted? Was it when it was a seed? Was it when the seed was in another fruit that burst forth? So where do you draw the line in the past? So he conceived it in such a way that the story was complete. The katha was complete in and of itself. And what that became is a itihasa of 100,000 verses. Now, 100,000 verses for us is just a number. Like, someone says someone is a billionaire. It's just a number. But how vast that number is, we don't realize. So if you look at the Greek classics, Iliad and Odyssey, they are the pinnacle of Greek culture. Mahabharata is 7 times the size of Iliad and Odyssey combined.
Yeah.
So such a vast text. He needed someone who was suitable to be able to write it down for him. Yeah. And he prayed to Bhagavan. In fact, he prayed to Brahmaji, not to Bhagavan. He prayed to Brahmaji and said, who is it that is capable enough of writing this down? Brahmaji said, there's only one. Vidyapati, Bhagavan Shri Ganesh. You have to invoke him and request him. So Ved Vyas ji requested him, and Ganesh ji had one condition, that I will only write down if you don't stop talking. You have to have conceived the whole thing in your head before I start. If you stop at any point to think of the next verse, then done. Once I put my pen down, it's done. So Ved Vyas ji also put a counter condition. He said, okay, I'm good with that. But you too have to only write down that which you fully understand in its full meaning, not just the Sanskrit grammar, not just the vocabulary, not just the story, the deeper meaning. So they agreed and they started. And this narration started, and whatever Vyasji used to say, within a moment it was written down. And it continued for days and nights and just continued and continued. And Vyasji got to the point where he couldn't breathe anymore. So he started to put more complex philosophical ideas in there. He gave the recitation as Krishna had given in the battlefield of the Bhagavad Gita. And so Ganeshji would pause there. And that time, Vyasji would catch his breath. Yeah. And in the process of writing, what happened is that no pen, no bamboo leaf, because it was all written on palm leaves. So no pen, nothing was available to scratch, because it used to just wear out so fast. And Ganesh didn't want to stop. So at one point he broke his tusk. And he started writing with it. Because he knows that this won't break, this won't wear out. Now, of course, there are many kathas, one of which is Parshuram hurled the Parshu at Ganesh when Sri Ganesh blocked his way to Kailas, because Shivji and Parvati were resting. And Parshuram showed up and he wanted to meet Shivji. And he threw the Parshu, his axe. And Ganesha recognized that that was his father's weapon. And that's why he took it on his trunk and allowed, on his tooth, on his tusk, and allowed it to be broken. That tells us that be willing to stoop to conquer. You don't have to fight everyone. Because Ganesh could have fought him and defeated him. But he stooped to conquer. Beautiful story. Here, when Ganesh broke off his tusk, what does it say? It tells us to achieve something great, we have to be willing to sacrifice. If we are not willing to sacrifice, then truly great things can't be achieved.
Yeah.
And look at this. This one sacrifice has ensured that we have the Mahabharata today. Even 6,000 years later, we are talking about it.
My God. So, I don't think this is a meaning that a lot of people know. It's just a theory up until now. So, thank you so much for it's so interesting. यहाँ पे एक और कहानी है कि जैसे ही श्री गणेश ने महाभारत लिखी, his body temperature rose and Ved Vyas ji picked him up and immersed him in water.
Correct.
Which is what visarjan typically also can be construed.
Correct.
What is this theory about?
So, one thing that's very interesting about this specific Ganesh festival, because there's a Ganesh Chaturthi, and most people don't know, there's a Ganesh Chaturthi in every Hindu calendar month. Okay. And that's usually known as Sankashti Chaturthi. Plus, there are two special Ganesh Chaturthis. One is in the month of Magh, which is in Jan-Feb, and one is now in August-September. August-September one is in Bhadrapad month. Now, what happens in August-September is that it's the end of the monsoon, right? When it's the end of the monsoon, what has happened? Everyone, because of the change in weather, starts to fall sick. And we see it now. Everyone in Mumbai has
somebody or the other sick.
Viral of some form.
Yeah.
So, what Ganesha worship does is, because Ganesha sits in our Mooladhara chakra, fundamental, foundational chakra, there he generates heat. And the worship of Bhagwan Sri Ganesh generates heat in our body to be able to regulate us and prepare us for the new season that's coming. Sometimes what happens when you're changing the speed of the fan or changing the AC, thoda zyada heat ho jata hai. So we need to regulate it down again. And that's where Visarjan and use of what? It's not just Visarjan, but we do Abhishekam also, Maha Abhishekam of Sri Ganesh. Not just with water, but with milk, with dahi, with sugar, with madhu, as in honey. We do it with coconut water and water. And we do it with chandan. Any n number of items can be offered within the shastras it's prescribed. What it does is it creates the right calibrated version of ourselves for the next chapter. Even Durva grass that we offer. See, Durva is offered only to Ganesha. It's not offered to anyone. Bel Patra, Bilva Patra, that is usually offered to Shiva, that can be offered to Ganesha. But Durva grass is usually only offered to Ganesha. Why? Because it has a cooling effect. So when Sri Ganesh sat in our Mooladhar overheats, that offering of
water
and offering of Durva grass regulates it back down.
Right. Okay. Okay. Understood. There are many forms of Sri Ganesh, 32 bases what we've researched. What are these forms about?
In Sanatan Dharma, there are a category of texts known as Puranas. And there are various Puranas, not just about single deities, but about multiple deities also. So, for example, for Bhagwan Vishnu, we have Vishnu Puran. We have Bhagavad Puran as well, where especially Bhagwan Shri Krishna has a predominant role to play. We have Devi Puran, Devi Bhagavad as it's called often. We have Shiv Puran. In the same way, we have Ganesh Puran. And exactly as in how in the Vishnu Puran and Bhagavad Puran, we are shown different forms that Bhagwan Shri Vishnu takes to fulfill his purpose. In the same way, Bhagwan Shri Ganesh takes different forms in the Ganesh Puran to fulfill his purpose. And this, I would actually really encourage the audience कि आप ये पुराण पढ़ो, read it, because it's a fascinating stories. For example,
where is it available? Sorry.
I found, that's a very good question, because I found one version on Amazon which I was not happy with.
Okay.
In the sense that it was okay, it was brief, cut to cut, जैसे basic translation दिया था. But then I went to Geeta Press Gorakhpur, which is a big publication house based in Uttar Pradesh, and they only have a Hindi translation, Sanskrit to Hindi. So that's the version that I've read, and hopefully now we'll do a project and we can get the English translation of that out as well. But there's a basic translations are available on Amazon.
We'll add some of these links that you send us so that people have the resources.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. So when you read these Puranas, we see different aspects of Bhagwan. Like I'll give you one form. Okay, there is an asura called Mushaka. Mushaka is in the form of a rat or a mouse and is wreaking havoc. Now, what does this tell us? Is that a mouse, regardless of how nice your house might be, can wreak havoc. Might be tiny, it'll go through your grain stores, make them useless. It'll go through your pantry and make all of the food in there useless. Whatever you have cooked suddenly becomes spoiled. So that Mushaka, that mouse, represents our ego. Even if it's so small, it can wreak havoc. And Ganesh Puran tells us how Bhagwan overcame Mushaka. But Bhagwan overcame Mushaka in such a way that he didn't kill him. He sublimated him. Then Mushaka recognized that there's someone greater. There's a being that is greater. And I should be in service of that being. So who are we? Are all Mushakas. We all like carrying our little egos and our little, kingdoms around with us and thinking that we are the rulers of these kingdoms. And Ganesha tells us that you surrender it to me. And then amazing thing happens. Then he will act through us. How amazing is it? This huge Mahashri Ganesh riding a little mouse.
Yeah.
It's impossible when you think of it logically.
Yeah.
But when we surrender our ego, represented by Mushaka, at the feet of Bhagwan, Bhagwan is available to act through us.
Yeah.
And there are innumerable such stories in Ganesh Puran.
There's another fascinating story. There's a female version of Ganeshji called Vinayaki.
Correct.
Why is she so less spoken about?
So there is a recognition in Sanatan Dharma that the masculine and feminine presence is both required to be effective. Yeah. And as a result of that recognition, every deity has a female counterpart. These are known as Shaktis. The deity's Shakti. Yeah. So you have what's known as Saptamatrikas, 7 forms of the deity's Shakti. So Brahma, Brahmi, Vishnu, Vaishnavi, Maheshwar, Maheshwari, and so on. You have Kaumari, you have Varahi and others. There are 7 specific forms. In the same logic, you also have, apart from these 7, another 2. Narasimhi, who is the Shakti of Narasimha, and Vinayaki, who is the Shakti of Vinayaka. Now, these deities are typically found, the Saptamatrikas and the female Shaktis are typically found in the Shakta Sampradaya, which says that when we worship the Devi is the one who gives capability to all creation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the aspects of the Devi alone are giving the potency.
Correct.
To various deities. Now, it's a little bit of a unknown subject because it's difficult to comprehend. Suddenly, if I say that Ganesha's Shakti comes from Devi, then people get confused. Okay, but I thought Ganesha was absolute. That's why these are kept, as Gupta sadhanas, secret sadhanas. These forms are not discussed that much because it's only for those who want to go down a very specific spiritual journey, For our general worship, we worship Bhagwan Shri Ganesh. We recognize that Bhagwan Shri Ganesh comes with two Devis, Siddhi and Buddhi, or Riddhi and Siddhi as they're also called, and we worship it in that form.
Yeah. Okay. That's also interesting.
It's very, we have
interesting.
in Bharat, what has happened unfortunately is over the years, a lot of these temples have been destroyed for whatever reason. Now, and a lot of these deities have also, their presence in Bharat has gone. Now what's interesting is with the question that you have asked, more and more people are interested.
Yeah.
So these deities are also coming back. Say, okay, you are a Devi worshipper, Devi Upasaka. You only just, I see Sri Ganesha and every deity I worship. Even if I'm happily singing Krishna bhajans, the eyes are full of tears, I'm still thinking of Bhagwan Sri Ganesh. Yeah. So in the same way, there will be Shakta worshippers who will come in front of Ganesh and who need the benediction and the blessings of Sri Ganesh. So for those seekers, we have the form of Vinayaki.
Wow.
Where they can get the benediction of Sri Ganesh, they can get the blessings of Sri Ganesh, but without ever letting go that Devi is supreme.
Very interesting. Another surprising form of Sri Ganesh is Aghori, which is known to be very fierce. It's a very fierce and it's a different side to what we typically see Sri Ganesh as. And people say this, that you should only begin praying to him if you're ready to lose everything. ऐसे क्यों है?
देखिए, इन हमारे शास्त्रों में देवता है हुआ फॉर जनरल वर्शिप. ऐसे डेटीज है जो कि जनरल वर्शिप के लिए है, और ऐसे भी डेटीज है जो कि स्पेशल साधना के लिए है. जैसे कि हमने बात की महागणपति और सिद्धि विनायक की. तो सिद्धि विनायक यू हैव टू डू स्पेशल साधना. सो इन द सेम वे फॉर अघोरी गणपति, for Uchishta Ganapati, who is a Tantrik form of Ganapati, you have to do a special prescribed sadhana. Now, when you go down the Aghora path, who goes down the Aghora path? People who are willing to lose everything for self-realization.
What is this path?
So, Aghora path is tradition within our sadhu culture, within our culture of seekers, within a culture of renunciates, who undertake very severe and esoteric tapasya. And they typically do it outside the visibility of society. So Aghoris will perform their worship in cremation grounds, or they will perform it deep in the forests where no one will come and disturb them, and nobody will view it. Why? Because it can be shocking to our eyes. In the sense that Aghoras, for example, in most renunciates, you will see, will have what is known as a kamandalu. Okay, a kamandalu is like a pitcher made from a gourd. Okay, जैसे कि कद्दू होता है, पम्पकिन होता है, उसको हॉलो करके ड्राई करते हुए एक पिक्चर बन जाता है, और वो लेके जाते हैं हर जगह. And in that they take all of the bhiksha, the alms that they receive. Many Aghoras carry the skull as a kamandalu, the cranium of, that is why, not because they're disrespecting the dead, because they realize that there is no difference between this skull and the material body. And they use that skull to keep reminding themselves over and over again. So their sadhana is very shocking to someone who is not
exposed to it. And
that's why they also respect the bounds of society, and they do it separate from society. In fact, it is relatively rare to get darshan of a Aghora sadhu outside of it is very rare to have darshan of a Aghori sadhu outside of Kumbh Melas. Because only in the Kumbh Mela will they come, and they will set up their akhadas, and they will be present and available for people to interact with.
और उनकी साधना में ऐसे क्या होता है that you and I will be like ये?
देखिए, उनकी साधना में मैं ज़्यादा तो इसके बारे में बात नहीं कर सकता, एक क्योंकि मैंने खुद एक्सपीरियंस नहीं किया, हालांकि मैं जानता हूँ उनके साधना के कोई एलिमेंट्स के बारे में, बट उनके साधना में क्या है, नो एवरी मटीरियल इज मटीरियल। जैसे कि हम भगवान पे फूल चढ़ाते हैं, सो दिस इज अ डिवाइन मटीरियल, उसका अच्छा सुगंध है एंड वी फील गुड ऑफरिंग इट टू भगवान। दे विल टेक एनी मटीरियल, इफ दे हैव टू टेक अ ह्यूमन बॉडी and consume it and offer it as prasad, they will do it. So that's why they do these sadhanas outside of our society. See, the way I describe it is, now we've got this wire here that's going down. This is actually a copper wire. That copper wire, if we touch it, easily will give us a shock. Yeah, that's why we have all of this insulation that is built around it. So in the same way, Aghori sadhana is a live wire. If we come in contact with it without preparation, we will be harmed by it.
Yeah.
तो हमारी हानि होगी, इसलिए ये जो गुप्तता है, सीक्रेसी है, वो एक इंसुलेशन की तरह बन जाती है उस पर। और वो जो फॉर्म्स है, दे विल ऑल्सो वर्शिप भैरवा, दे विल ऑल्सो वर्शिप भैरवी, दे विल ऑल्सो वर्शिप गणपति, लेकिन उनके जो अघोरी गणपति है वो हमारे अंडरस्टैंडिंग, और जो उनका वर्शिप करने का तरीका है वो हमारे अंडरस्टैंडिंग के बहुत परे है।
और क्या हासिल होता है? हाउ इज देयर साधना, द आउटकम ऑफ इट डिफरेंट फ्रॉम आवर्स? व्हाई डू पीपल टेक द पाथ?
या सो इन सनातन धर्म there are 4 objectives to human life. In fact, there's only really one, but there are 3 preparatory objectives to the 4th. Those are dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Dharma we translate as duty, but the Sanskrit root of it is dharyate iti dharma, that which upholds as dharma. So what Bhagavan Shri Krishna explains in detail in the Bhagavad Gita is be authentic. Be authentic to who you are. Be authentic to your nature. Arjun says, I'm going to leave the battlefield and go. He says, no, you are a warrior. Yeah. Be authentic. So in our lives also we are told, authentically live your life in alignment with who you are as a person. That is performance of our dharma. If you are married to someone, authentically be there for them. Share your time with them. That is your dharma as a husband or a wife or a partner. You know, if you have a sibling, protect them. And as an older sibling, protect them. That is your dharma as a brother or sister. So dharma. Artha is the accumulation of all of the means of living in alignment with dharma and for the performance of dharma. This includes wealth, but it also includes values. That accrue your wealth with ethics so that you can use it in the performance of dharma. Third one is kama. See, we have very puritanical religions around the world. Hinduism is okay, is it? Of course, pleasure and desire is part of life.
Yeah.
But direct your desire in service of dharma. You know, utilize it. Don't, if people are in a married relationship, don't just use your partner for your pleasure, but use the union such that in your pleasurable union, there's something of value created for the world.
Yeah.
And then the 4th one is moksha. Moksha is liberation. Liberation from what? Liberation from the cycles of birth and death. Liberation from the clutches of karma. Now what happens is, we are typically recommended to live all 4 stages in life. Yeah. Be a student for a period of time. Be a householder for a period of time. Express whatever karmas you've been given with. Then start to walk away. That process called vanaprastha. Start to walk away. Give control to your children, grandchildren. Make sure that you've got a nest egg and live comfortably within those means. And then the 4th one is sannyas. Sannyas is, again, samyak and nyas. These are the 2 Sanskrit roots of it. Nyas means to set down. Whatever I have done in life, I set it down. I set it away. So that's why even when you're laying a foundation stone in Sanskrit, it's called Shilanyas. Shila is the brick. And we put the brick down. We set it down. So nyas. And sun is complete. Samyak. Completely set aside who we are. And focus 100% on realization. Now what happens is, for some individuals, because of their own past sadhana, because of the karmas that they have been born with in this lifetime, they don't need to go through all 4 stages. They can choose after brahmacharya, or even after, for whatever reason the household stage comes to an end, they can choose, now I just want to pursue sannyas. And one who pursues sannyas typically undergoes a process that then requires them to wear orange robes. That's why they are then known as a sannyasi. That orange represents the fire of knowledge that is burning within them. Yeah. Now, once you have become a sannyasi, also there are different pathways. There's a path of bhakti, there's a path of jnana, there's a path of karma, and then there's a path that is outside all of these paths. That path that is outside all of these is known as Aghora.
Right.
So it is a very esoteric path that is maintained by the lineage of gurus. It's typically the Nath tradition, that started with Gorakhnath and from that tradition, and it is carried on till today. But not very much is known, and even if it is known, it is not very publicly discussed.
Yeah, as we have very little information, so we thought we'll get it from you. You spoke about the tantric form as well.
Correct.
Let's discuss that.
So when we do worship, when we perform worship in Hinduism, there are different puja paddhatis. There are different traditions, there are different procedures that we utilize, right? Different frameworks. That is the correct word for it. These are typically Vedic paddhati, where the mantras are only from the Vedas. Then you have Puranic paddhati, where you perform the same steps, but we use mantras from the Puranas. So, for example, for Vishnu, if you say Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, that was revealed in the Bhagavad Puran.
Yeah.
So that's the Puranic paddhati. Then you have Agamic paddhatis. They're usually Shaiva Agamas, where they include devotional music into worship. There's Devi Agamas and Vaishnava Agamas as well, but mainly Shiva, Agamic. Then you have Pancharatrik paddhati, which is for Vishnu worship, or Vaishnava forms of worship. So, the ISKCON movement, they will typically use Pancharatrik processes. Apart from these four, you also have tantric processes. Now, what is tantra? Tantra, the word itself means methodology. Yeah. So, you have mantra, which is mananat trayate iti mantra. That which helps us transcend the mind is mantra. To utilize the mantra, you need what is known as a yantra. Yeah. Or the mantra reveals what is known as a yantra. Yantra is a tool. And the process of utilizing the tool and the mantra together is known as tantra. Now, within tantra also you have many different forms of tantric practices. The two most known, I don't want to say the highest or whatever, but the best known are Kaulachar and Samayachar. Samayachar typically is a lot of the pujas that happen today are by Samayachar Paddhati, or what's known as Mishra Paddhati, mixed. You have a bit of Vedic, you have a bit of Puranic, you have a bit of Tantric. So it all becomes one, and we offer with our heart through those Mishra Paddhatis. But what is special about the Tantric form of worship is that it is extremely methodical. In other types of worship, yes, there's a predominance of bhava. And says, okay, chalo, ye yahan pe problem ho gaya, so you can ask for forgiveness. And Tantra, no. Everything has to be performed in the right way, in the right sequence, to be able to then connect with the energy. In fact, in one way, it is probably, if you walk this path, it's probably the most scientific of all the processes, because at every age, at every step, you are experimenting with the energy of the deity, and you are testing that, have I experienced this? And then you get that experience, then you move on to the next, then you move on to the next, then you move on to the next. And what happens is, in the tantric process, you have use of what is known as a yantra. Yantra is a 2D geometric diagram, for lack of a better description. That 2D diagram, when it becomes 3D, is known as a Meru. So if you have seen a Shri Yantra, Shri Meru, it's 3D, and people have now put it in their car and their office and all that. But actually, it's a very esoteric form of worship. And in that worship, you start from the outside and you invoke the deity that's on the outer layer. And then you've invoked all of those deities. Then you go in the next, then you go into the next, until in the center, you meet the principal deity.
Wow.
So for Ganesha, that process in the center is Uchishta Ganapati. Yeah. So if we have to meet Uchishta Ganapati, that process of sadhana is, it can go on for years.
Years.
So this is not something that Uchishta Ganapati is not a form that we worship in Ganesh Utsav.
Yeah.
But if someone wants to go deep, like seriously deep
yeah.
in Ganesh sadhana, then it is available.
Okay. So now we'll come to pretty much how we wrap this up in our context, right?
Yeah.
So from CEOs to world leaders, so many people worship Sri Ganesh. There is a reason why he is he's popular, right? For the lack of a better word. What are some of the lessons that we can apply to our life from Sri Ganesh?
Sri Ganesh is the medium of manifesting anything and everything that you want. So what Sri Ganesh does is that he secures all of our fundamental human needs. Food, shelter, protection, clothing, Ganesh ji gives us. Not that other deities don't give us or can't give us, but Ganesh ji definitely gives us. And that's why what you see, especially in Mumbai at this time during Ganesh Utsav, you will see Ganesh ji's presence in the home of the wealthiest person in the country and in the home of someone who is living on a shanty on the street. And they are both worshipping him with the same level of love. So anyone who wants to do anything great requires the presence of Ganesha in their lives. And one of the things that I do is I coach very senior executives, CEOs, investors with multiple businesses, not on how to run their businesses, because they're very good at that, but on how to manage themselves and how to utilize the knowledge of Shastra in bringing out the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
And in that, we utilize a number of typical coaching processes like journaling, like, long discussions, writing down our thoughts and so on. But we also use a lot of sadhana. We use a lot of meditation. And there's a lot of guided meditations that I have provided that actually are now on my YouTube channel for free. That anyone can take, and it's a 5-minute meditation also, where you can then connect with the energy of Sri Ganesha. And the best and easiest way is just by chanting Om. Because Om is known as the Pranava mantra, and Ganesha's name is Pranava. So in the form of the mantra, in the sound, in the vibration of the mantra itself, is Ganesha's presence. And it is said in the Bible, in the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In our Shastras, it is said that word is Om. When the universe was created, when the Big Bang happened, the sound with which the entire creation manifested was Om. So you do that Om sadhana, thinking of Ganesh, and that one being who has created the one undifferentiated absolute truth that has manifested everything will manifest what you want in your life. That is the speciality of Ganesha.
Wow. Okay. And any last thoughts on a few things that perhaps we can do as takeaways to imbibe that life of Sri Ganesh?
So the beauty of Sri Ganesh, as I've said, is that he is very accessible.
Yeah.
So if anyone has a Ganesh deity in their home, please at least light a lamp in front of it. If you've got an exam or something, light it. Recognize that there's a higher power guiding our lives. And once we start doing that, we will see his presence in our lives. What we should then do is take the next step. Because normally what happens when you have a big meeting, big exam, Aghori Ganpati, Bappa, bachalo, and we light the lamp. Then once we see him acting in our lives, what we should do is, even on days when we don't have a reason, we should light a lamp, or we should put a dhup, or offer a flower, whatever. Offer a spoonful of water. Like I said, any one of those 5, just offer something and offer our gratitude. Okay, thank you, Ganeshi. Thanks to you, these things are happening in my life. Please stay with me, please guide me. And I'm telling you from personal experience, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, I've been in so many boardroom meetings where before I walked into the room, I've just prayed to Ganesha, Bhagwan, be with me. And I've just observed myself that this mouth is speaking. And I'm like, Arey, ye words kahan se aaye? Ye thoughts kahan se aaye? How did we navigate this meeting? So just invoke Bhagwan Shri Ganesh, build a connection with him, and you see he will start acting through you.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for doing this, Om. And we have a second amazing episode with you to come out during the festivities. So, the first of many. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Jai Shri Ganesh.
Jai Shri Ganesh. Thank you for being the best community, and we'll see you in the next one.